Story 1. I disclosed to a minority partner that the majority partner owed him $100,000. He could have easily received a check for that amount, but he sued for $700,000, spent $300,000 on a lawyer, and got nothing. Story 2. Not me, but my cousin. He was working his first job in marketing at one of the top marketing firms in the country. My cousin is ridiculously good-looking, used to be a model for Abercrombie & Fitch, not just the local store models, but one of the national models, and dresses well. So he gets to the job and his boss's boss, male, starts hitting on him ridiculously. He's invited to lunch, dinner, and asked if he wants to go to the boss's weekend home, all the time turning him down. One time in the car, his boss told him how quickly he would advance if he spent the weekend with him, and my cousin recorded the entire conversation. He declined the boss and then ignored him on invites for weeks until the boss stopped asking. Fast forward to 3 months after he's hired, and he's doing his review with human resources, and his immediate supervisor is there. He starts to hear about how he's not a good fit, not a team player, etc. They let him know they were terminating him, and he grabbed the paperwork they wanted him to sign and put it in his pocket. Then he pulled out his phone and played his boss's recording. After he was done, he looked at the human resources manager and asked if she had anything to say. They both left the room acting shell-shocked, and he stayed there in the conference room until the human resources manager came back an hour later. She put her boss on the conference line, and they started telling him it was illegal to record private conversations, they would file charges, etc. He laughed and told them he would go to the press and that he knows they would love to put him on television. 3 days later, he was signing a non-disclosure and picking up a check almost big enough to pay for his 3 years of law school. For anyone wondering, no, the guy who harassed him was not fired, and he has since been promoted again by the company. Story 3. My best friend worked at a roadside attraction near Chattanooga, Tennessee called Ruby Falls. It's supposedly a waterfall inside a cave. Of course, the trail to the cave is redone with all sorts of rock brought in from around the world. I think they've owned up to that part now, but the waterfall itself is barely a trickle naturally, and then only in the wetter season. They've run a pipe up there to supplement the falls, hidden by cracks and crevices and cemented over, and powered by a pump off to the side, which you can't hear when the water is splashing down from 100 feet overhead. It's 99% from the city of Chattanooga, or maybe Lookout Mountain Municipal Water Supply. Of course, with such a wet area, old electrical wires going back to the Great Depression, and 300 feet underground, it sputters or shorts out and stops every now and then. The first rule in the falls room is to make everybody leave immediately if the power goes out, not for safety, but because the fable agreed upon will be shown as fake. Story 4. It's not a non-disclosure agreement. It's a secrecy agreement with the Department of Defense that elapsed after 25 years. I worked as a programmer for the United States Air Force on the global United States Air Force budget in 1979 through early 1981. There was a period of time after Reagan became a leading candidate, but before he won the election or took office. Jimmy Carter was a lame duck president, and many senior officers really hated him. During this time, the United States Air Force had flown the B-1. Not the B-1A, not the B-1B, this was when it was just the B-1. People had spent a significant portion of their careers working on delivering the B-1 program. They really believed in the B-1 as a strategic long-range supersonic bomber. Jimmy Carter hated the B-1. He viewed it as a wasteful, unnecessary, bloated program designed to keep the builders afloat at the expense of the taxpayer. He had canceled the project in something like 1977. But a couple of flying examples were available, but never to see service. Reagan loved the B-1. It was everything he loved about our military programs. Fast, sexy, high-tech, and better than anything the Soviets had. All of that being said, here's what happened. Jimmy Carter gave explicit orders that the only 2 B-1s currently flying be broken up into parts, the program completely canceled, the engineering materials be archived at the Pentagon, and all funding ended. He wanted direct evidence sent to him that this had happened, in the form of pictures of the broken-up aircraft. Ronald Reagan was informed of this order by sources in our organization. Reagan let it be known that Carter's order was absolutely not to be followed under any circumstances. Now, where do I come in? I was just this guy working on the Air Force budget. It was a top-secret clearance, mainly because any analyst could correlate money to named projects, both globally and on bases. So one day I am going over daily reports and I see this massive new expenditure for Wright-Patterson, I think. It's not in the approved project list. It's not in the unapproved project list. So clearly it has not gone up to Congress. Yet the money is actually in the dispersal. So I go to my boss and I point it out. It doesn't belong there, so obviously it's a mistake. He agrees and we reverse it. A couple of days later, all hell breaks loose when a general officer I had never seen before comes rampaging through the office demanding to know who shorted his funding. Now, at this point, we get hauled into a room, sworn to secrecy, and told to fund this maintenance project. What was the project? Pay a huge team of contractors to very carefully disassemble one of the B-1s, drag in parts from other aircraft, show it being crushed, and send pictures to Carter. Meanwhile, reassemble the plane and hide both of them inside black hangars. And that was why Reagan was able to have the program restarted literally within days of taking office. The program was fully back online in 1981. Story 5. Technically, I am still bound by the non-disclosure agreement, but the company did not know how to write non-disclosure agreements. It is like they had the following conversation. Legal. Hey, we need a non-disclosure agreement just like all these other companies have. Publisher. Do you know how to write a non-disclosure agreement? Legal. No. The non-disclosure agreement was for a role-playing game that I signed up to play test with the group. The non-disclosure agreement itself actually forbade me, the person running the game and providing feedback to the company, from talking about it, but had no such restrictions in place for anyone I ran the game for. It only required me to sign it, not any of my players. The way it was written, I was not allowed to play the game with any of the players in the group. How they expected anyone to playtest the game, I do not know. The way that role-playing game playtests are supposed to happen is 1. The company releases a playtest document. 2. People play it. 3. They make changes for another round of playtesting. What actually happened is the company changed the core resolution mechanic of the game in the middle of the first round of testing, in the middle of a long message forum thread, based on the feedback of people who were openly admitting they only read the rules and had not actually played the game. One of the people who stated they had not played the game also said he did not have a group of players they were going to play it with. So they changed the game based on nothing but feedback from people who had not tested anything. To top it off, after my group actually played the game and submitted feedback, we were not invited back to the second round of playtesting. Also, we were left off the playtest credits. Story 6. That married grocery store manager in his late 40s was, indeed, having sex with that 17-year-old courtesy clerk in the compressor room. This was over 15 years ago when I was a person in charge, and not yet a full assistant store manager. Our store in the back room had a couple of rooms upstairs. A large room that housed all of our electrical breakers and backup generators, and a room that housed all of our compressors that kept our freezers and coolers running. Both were locked at all times for security reasons. They were accessible only through the back room. The 17-year-old courtesy clerk, a bagger, had worked there for a while. She was not the best worker. She had a habit of disappearing for a half hour or an hour at a time. I and the other persons in charge complained and tried discipline, but the store manager blocked it. So we just dealt with it. Yes, she was an attractive blonde. I was in charge one night, and we got an alarm that one of the compressors was low. It was my job to check the level, record the compressor number, and turn it in. When I went up to the room, the door was propped open with a bucket. I assumed whoever worked in the room last left it open. If you have never been in a compressor room before, I have to tell you that it is loud. Our store had several diesel engines that powered the compressors. I proceeded into the back of the room, came around a corner to see the girl, not quite naked, but not fully clothed, being serviced by our store manager, who had left for the day hours ago. Neither saw me, and I hightailed it out of there. I wrestled with what to do. I was worried about my career at the time, so I called the security hotline and made an anonymous call and told them in vague terms what happened and that they should contact me about details. I'm 100% certain that they knew it was me that called. A couple of days later, the store manager is suspended, and I'm interviewed, the assistant store manager is interviewed, and the persons in charge are interviewed. They tell us not to discuss it, so of course we did. I was a little late to the party. Almost everyone knew. The store manager would use his store keys to come into the back room, meet the courtesy clerk, and then would hook up in the compressor room. She was not the first teenager he had done this with at this store and others. They fired the store manager and like an idiot, he sued. Dozens of people are deposed. Non-disclosure agreements are drawn up and signed. He thinks better of it, drops the suit, and that's the last I ever heard of him. The girl quit right after the store manager was suspended. Story 7. I worked at a small bakery in New York City when I was younger. Every morning, the bakery would take their day-old cupcakes and deliver them to a tour company that did Sex and the City tours. The tour company would pass our cupcakes off as cupcakes from Magnolia, a significantly more popular bakery. Story 8. When I was fired from Auntie Anne's in 2010, I signed a 10-year non-compete and non-disclosure agreement contract, promising not to detail the baking secrets or work for another pretzel establishment. Well, that ended this year, so now I can run out and start a pretzel store because the secret I was keeping was that making pretzels literally requires 2 products, one of them being water and the other a large bag of pretzel meal, dust, or powder. Quite literally, anyone with $2,500 can start a pretzel stand and make perfectly fine pretzels. It's not difficult whatsoever. Edit. I signed the letter when I was hired, but I got a copy with my termination letter. Story 9. I used to work for a large gas station chain. I worked at its warehouse where it creates a lot of the donuts. The room was really hot, so we were always sweating. There are some machines where the donuts get glazed in chocolate. They are small machines that look almost like a barbecue grill. They always wanted us to be super fast glazing the donuts. Working in a hot room and at super fast speeds, it was natural for a lot of people's sweat to drip into the chocolate underneath us. Never eat the chocolate donuts from a gas station. Story 10. I was wrongfully terminated by a past employer. They offered a low settlement and withheld payment on my accrued vacation. This part was actually illegal. It took about a year for their attorneys to realize that we were not lying about them holding back the accrued vacation, which caused them to make a more than generous offer to settle my claim against them. Story 11. I signed a non-disclosure agreement after negotiating a 6-figure settlement with my mortgage lender. Back in 2013, the bank illegally sold my home while I was living there and making monthly payments. I discovered this when the new owners evicted me and my 3 kids. At the time, I thought someone was trying to steal my identity, etc. I spent the next 2 years writing legal documents and had to represent myself in court. The bank owned every legitimate legal firm I contacted. Also, the first lawyer I hired took my last $7,000 and was promptly disbarred for misconduct with previous cases. I had no money, no home, but I had a laptop, printer, and access to the county court law library. We were about a week away from selecting a jury when we came to a settlement agreement. In the end, each of my kids, now in their 20s, got an inexpensive new car, and I live at the beach. Which bank, you ask? I can't tell you the name, but might I suggest that it rhymes with case? They settled because they were worried that if the case went to trial, it would become public. Then, everyone would know for certain that they had lied, cheated, and swindled to steal homes from hardworking people. The bank would lose when no one took out new loans with them. Edit. I received a posting on my front door. I went to the eviction court and lost because technically the new owners paid for my house. I was given 7 days to move all my stuff, had lived there 13 years, or face the sheriff. I had 3 kids. I didn't want the drama of handcuffs, so we packed and moved, then sought relief through the court system. Story 12. People wouldn't believe how old-fashioned information technology systems are behind big online shops, etc. Anyone with decent information technology skills would be able to crack them. Some of them are 30-year-old command line systems that are only in place because everything was built around them and have never been replaced. Story 13. I was a contractor for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. I still fully support the agency, but I was extremely frustrated when I learned that each separate National Aeronautics and Space Administration center, such as the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Kennedy, Ames, and Goddard, hides many of its inventions and breakthroughs from the other centers. This happens so that when headquarters is ready to assign a big mission and a lot of dollars to one center, they have a better chance to compete over the others. Look what we invented. Ames cannot do this over there. Give us the next moon orbiter. The downside is that there is a lot of reinvention and duplicated efforts going on. Sometimes years of work go down the drain when another center does the same thing faster. My perspective was, you all work for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Share knowledge, collaborate. I was frequently ordered to tone down anything revealing when speaking to other centers.